Do you know of a stellar leader or an outstanding organization that deserves a proper shout-out? Nominate them for IBJ's awards. From 40 in their 40s and Women of Influence to Nonprofit and Healthcare Excellence Awards, we're celebrating rising stars, seasoned leaders, and organizations making a difference. Discover which programs are accepting nominations now at ibj.com/nominate.
First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of NFP, the fifth largest insurance broker in the world, combining local expertise with access to global capabilities and solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
This was the one he wanted more than anything else in the world. And here it comes, Mario. The checkered flag of victory. He's done it.
I've been wanting to win this race so bad that you can't believe it, and I still can't believe it's true. I'm gonna have to be pinching myself all night.
Whether it was his 1969 dream victory at the world's greatest spectacle in racing, or 2 years earlier at the Super Bowl of stock car racing.
Mario Andretti ready to take the checkered flag, and there it is. He made it. Mario Andretti has won the 1967 Daytona 500.
Or on the international stage behind the wheel of an F1 car. No one has ever driven a race car like Mario Andretti, a global icon, synonymous with speed, passion, and winning. The only man to win the most prestigious trifecta in auto racing, Indy, Daytona, and the F1 championship. One of his sweetest victories, taking the checkered flag into the Automotive Hall of Fame.
Everything about the automobile has always been inspiring to me, and it will be until the end of my time. I'm honored to have a place in the hall and cherish the opportunity it's given me to have a lasting bond with the automobile. If pure love of the automobile is the only criteria for this award, then I deserve it. And I humbly accept.
One of the greatest drivers in the history of motorsports, the only person to be named United States Driver of the Year in 3 decades, the legendary Mario Andretti, my first guest as the green flag falls on season 2 of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. To know what drives Mario Andretti, you really have to go back to the 1940s. He was a little boy growing up in a tiny village in Italy. Mario and twin brother Aldo, just toddlers at the time, would take out the lids to their mother's pots and pans and pretend to race around the kitchen before they had ever laid eyes on a car. The fallout from post-World War II forced Mario's family to move from that small village to a refugee camp in Lucca, Italy, where they lived for 7 years. The Andrettis eventually immigrated to the United States in 1955, settling in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, with just $125 to their name. It was there that Mario's fascination with cars, his passion to tame the beast, took off and eventually led him to become one of the most successful drivers ever to get behind the wheel of a race car. And I'm very pleased to kick off season 2 of the Business and Beyond podcast with motorsports legend Mario Andretti. Mario, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny, you are quote unquote retired, but I seem to see you a lot of different places. You look as active, as engaged, as enthusiastic as ever. You strike me as a guy who probably is never going to retire. Is that accurate?
You got it. There's no question that I think when I retire, they'll put me in the box. That's it. And it better have wheels on it.
Yeah. Better have wheels. I like that. What is keeping you busy these days?
Well, we have obviously followed motorsports in general, especially IndyCar, as you can imagine, with my son Michael involved and my grandson, and again, but follow Formula One for many reasons. I love that. I love that scene. sports cars. I have an Andretti sports cars in this class. He just pulled for the 24 hours of Daytona this weekend, and the Rolex 24. And again, then we have some business. We have some business ventures going, such as we have a petroleum company on the West Coast in 3 states, California, Oregon, Washington. And also we have facilities like a go-kart, but it's a go-kart and games facilities in 3 states, in Georgia, Texas, and Florida. And we're looking at some properties north of Indianapolis around Fishers. That's an ongoing project throughout the different parts of the state. We have another one going in Arizona. So again, my plate is full.
It sounds like it is very, very full indeed. Well, you mentioned Michael and Andretti Motorsports, and he made headlines just recently here. He's taking the team public, right?
Well, it's not taking the team public. I mean, I'm involved in that. We did a SPAC.
Okay.
Yes, and that's got other ramifications and potentials rather than just the racing. At the moment, that has nothing to do with his racing. Nevertheless, as I said, we're involved in different ventures.
You're involved in a lot. You still find time for fun. One of the things that I have noticed online, I've actually participated. My wife and I sent in a picture. You ask for folks to send their Christmas tree pictures, right, on social media, and I'm telling you, it's fascinating to look at those. To look at all those pictures.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great tradition, that we started, and now it seems like people expect to see what we've got every year. I mean, we put up a real tree. It's not a artificial one. So there's a lot of work to do. But again, for that time of the year, we enjoy it, and then it's wonderful the response that we get across the social media. So I guess we'll keep it going.
Good. A lot of people enjoy that. Hey, I have to ask you, Mario, because I heard this on another podcast, and it was kind of it seemed like a tease for what might be ahead in 2022. Are you considering getting behind the wheel of a car in 2022?
Well, I'm doing a 2-seater. That's what I've been doing. So,
right.
And there could be another opportunity. It's part of my bucket list, but that has yet to potentially be finalized. So there's always something to look forward to. That's the important thing.
Okay, we're going to stay tuned to that, see what Mario's bucket list item is. But Mario, your love affair with racing, with motorsports is well documented. I mentioned you and Aldo taking the lids to your mom's pots and pans, imagining you were behind the wheel. When did it start? When did you really get hooked on motorsports and racing?
It's as early as I can remember, quite honestly. And I always say, I don't know why. But Aldo and I were just attracted to this and fascinated when we were just old enough to just reason. And the only way that I can say is because Indy was very prominent in motorsports in the 50s as well, because that's when Formula One officially started. And you had Ferrari, I always say Maserati, Alfa Romeo involved immediately. So being so strong in that, newsreels and everything always gave you, a good taste of what was going on all over the world in Formula One. And as kids, we just actually that was very impressive. And then a year before we came to the station, 54, some friends of ours took us to see the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. And that was amazing because Alberto Ascari, which was a current world champion, was my absolute idol. Because I saw him, and I didn't meet him personally, but I just saw him out on the track. And that again, that's where it really started for real. I always said, and from there on, there was no plan B as far as what we were going to try to do in our life. And that's it. Coming to America, a lot of these dreams became reality.
Yeah. Well, and your mom and dad, as I understand it, didn't really like the idea of you getting into racing, did they?
Well, it's It's my dad primarily because, and not only because you could hear about is fatalities in those days. I mean, as soon just a month before we left for America, my idol Ascari was killed. And during a test run before coming to Sebring, actually, and so that my dad not being a race fan. He knew that the downside of the sport at the time, obviously was not as safe as what we are enjoying today. And that's all he was concerned about, nothing else. But when he realized that, we were going to do it, by hook or crook. And from there on, obviously, he supported Aldo and I in the best possible way, always biggest fan.
Yeah. What is it, you speak about your love affair with racing? How about your affinity, your connection, your passion for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indianapolis 500? Talk about that, Mario, because I know obviously it's a special place to a lot of people, and certainly including you.
Yes, of course. I mean, for American racers, I mean, that's our Mecca. That's like a shrine for us. And I mean, look back at the rich tradition that it holds, and it's because of Indianapolis that there's actually a championship, because everything started with just one race, and then it formed a championship, which becomes a national championship. But again, the dream of every young lad that wants to be a race driver, you'd like to win that and then win the championship. It should be the other way around, Right. But I always said, winning Indy is worth a championship. It's amazing. It's unfair sometimes, but that's a fact. And you gravitate to that. I learned about Indianapolis when I was about 11 years old in Italy, actually through watching a movie To Please a Lady, which was actually was traduced in Italian, and the title in Italy was Indianapolis. And that's when I first learned, yes. And the next time that I was really impressed by that was in 14 years of age, when Bill Vukovich won, and he won at the average of just over 120 miles an hour, which in kilometers, it's over 200 kilometers per hour. So us as kids, oh my God, I mean, you never see speed like that. So those were the impressive numbers, that made me realize it, and it got me curious about what's Indianapolis.
Yeah.
And of course, when we came to the States, I soon found out, because the first time that we visited Indianapolis, 3 years after we arrived here, in 1958, I saw the race. I was sitting in turn 4, and uncle of ours took us there, but we already had been racing for a year in stock cars. So that's it, and then I figured someday I want to be here. And that's how the saga goes. You just keep dreaming, keep setting ambitious goals for yourself, and you keep working harder and harder to try to reach these goals.
Well, you obviously accomplished the heights of success across multiple motorsports channels. What was it about it? It was well documented, the quote unquote Andretti curse. You won the race obviously in '69, but had such bad luck and disappointments over the years. How did you deal with that over time? I mean, it became ridiculous. At one point, you had these great cars, but there would always be something would happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that's disappointing, no question about it, knowing that you could have had more results than just one win. But at the same time, when I look back, I'm third all time in laps led. I led more laps than all but one of the 4-time winners. So I got some satisfaction out of it. At least they knew I was there. As I say, I think I keep saying, and I think I'm correct, that if the race was 400 miles, I think I would have won it 4 or 5 times at least.
Yeah.
Anyway, but Indy, this thing about the curse, that was not my saying ever. I think I was blessed for having the opportunity to race at Indy for 29 times. And I had fantastic satisfaction out of qualifying up front, which always, I had the fortune to do it. I had good equipment. And so I look at my time at Indianapolis as something shining moments. That's all I can say. I have nothing really negative. It's just things that sometimes didn't happen the way I was hoping. But as a family, we have so much to be thankful for. I mean, moments like 1991 and 92, there were four of us, the same family at Indianapolis, which never happened before or since. So to have had all of those moments, it's precious, no question about it. So that's the way I look at it. I look at the positive side. We have plenty of that.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. You mentioned family, and there are people who look at the sport, such a traditional sport, and people in open wheel, they say, "Gosh, we don't have those Andretti, 4-8, Unser, all those names of the past, kind of missing now in the sport." Agree with that or not?
I don't, in so many ways, because every sport evolves, with time. And right now, I think the IndyCar series is rich, very rich of talents that maybe some are not as well known as they should be, but they're there and they will be. They're making their mark, and it's all about special talents that are to be appreciated. And so again, you're not always going to have the same guys driving. Sooner or later, they're going to retire or just fall by the wayside. But again, looking at the sport where it is and what it's enjoying today, there's so much to look forward to. Myself, I just can't wait for the season to start, just to be able to look at and watch some of these lads out there, to see how they're going to be doing and the prospects they have, and so again, the sport is in good hands, and it's really well positioned.
Yeah. Again, sport's so much about relationships, and obviously you have many, many strong relationships. How about your relationship with AJ Foyt? I think Foyt and Andretti, no two bigger names in Indianapolis 500 lore, to be sure. I read somewhere where you said AJ made you a better driver. Talk about your relationship with AJ over the years.
Well, we had it turned out to be a good rivalry. Rivalries are good for the sport, as you all know, always know. And for me, when I got to the top level, in Indy cars in '65, he was already a champion. He's 5 years my senior, and he was the yardstick, so to speak. And if you beat Foyt, you sort of can figure you belong there. You made it, and so it gives you that sort of the carrot to go for, if you will, and because of that, you just. When somebody's that good, you figure, well, if I'm going to be up to that level, I better start working and work hard. And that was, for me, it was easy to apply that because I love what I was doing. I just, my passion is what drove me. And again, so I always said, finishing, having Foyt running second to you is the ultimate at the time. But I always said it was a great day, even finishing behind him. So that's how you feel about certain individuals, and he was certainly one of them. And there are not a lot of them like that, by the way. And that's why I've always had the greatest respect and admiration for him as a driver, no question about it. And along the way, as time goes on, I think we became good friends also.
Yeah. Any favorite? Probably many, but I put you on the spot here. Any favorite AJ stories you can remember?
Yeah, there's so many. The one that I felt was pretty good when again he wasn't really too happy with me, but it was at the Hoosier 100.
Driving wheel to wheel on the main straightaway, Andretti makes the challenge, but Foyt hangs on to that lead as they hit that turn in a great display of driving.
which was really the dirt track race of the season. After the 500 there at the Hoosier 100 was like the second one. Actually, the best. I think it was the best prize money that you could gain. They could earn that year.
With all of the cars trying to get closer to that $60,000 purse.
I beat him on the last lap.
Boyd is in trouble. He lost it and kissed the wall. Something may be wrong with Boyd's car. Andretti has closed in, taking over the lead. And there's the checkered flag. Mario Andretti in car number 1 is the winner.
And in the victory lane, he said that his brake pedal broke. And then I said, well, I never touched the brakes. So that kind of got him lit up a little bit.
That is a good one. I love that. Love that. Much more with Mario Andretti when we return, including the early days in Italy, how that forged his future, and much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
And the crowd beginning to pay its tribute to Andretti, the young man who came to this country at the age of 14 as an immigrant from Italy.
First Person Advisors is now a subsidiary of National Financial Partners, the 5th largest insurance broker and consultant in the world. Develop your total reward strategies all in one place with the combination of First Person's local expertise and NFP's global resources and integrated solutions. Learn more at firstpersonadvisors.com.
I don't actually remember the moment I fell in love with cars. But I know I was still a toddler and still living in Italy. And that's especially odd because our family didn't even own a car.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. As we begin season 2 of the Business and Beyond podcast, really pleased to have as my guest racing icon Mario Andretti. And Mario, your story on so many levels is so interesting, so fascinating, including how you grew up in those early days, born in tiny village in Italy, which now I think is part of Croatia, as I did some research. But you grew up there. World War II obviously changed the trajectory of your life. And you and your family were forced into a refugee camp in Lucca, Italy for 7 years. What was that like?
Well, as kids, we certainly didn't suffer. My dad was one to always provide for us. And, he was going through, a part of his life that, was totally upside down. And we were just the product of a war. And being born in a region where it was just a border, of Italy. And when Italy lost the war, they lost that territory, and it was occupied by Yugoslavia, hardline communism, Marshal Tito at the head of it all. And so there was a choice, and my dad, maybe because he was an owner of a lot of holdings, that real estate holdings, and he had over 2,000 acres, 2,100 acres, tenants and so forth. The family was well set, well established there, and all of a sudden under communism, you don't own anything. The state owns all, and you're working for the state. And we had a choice. You had like thousands and thousands of others in that region to stay, succumb to communism, or leave. We wound up to be. My dad chose, to leave and maintain the Italian citizenship, and we were refugees in our own country, actually, in Italy, inside Italy and Lucca, as it turned out to be, and after the war, in like many other countries in Europe, the unemployment and everything else, the country was really upside down for so many years. And we had an uncle on my mother's side here that immigrated to America, about 30, 40 years earlier. And we kept correspondence. He's the one who said to my dad, why don't you come to America? So we were in a refugee camp from 48 to 55. And in 1952 is when my dad applied for visas. The visas didn't come through until 1955.
Wow.
3 years later. And that was the decision time. And my dad said, well, so we're going to America for 5 years and then maybe come back. And that's, so that's how he broke the news to us. As kids, we were fine. I mean, it's, again, as kids, you adapt, you roll with the punches. There are other kids, you make friends, you go to school. And again, we were just fine as kids. We were never hungry, we were never cold, so from that standpoint, everything, my dad did his job and as life went on, I learned to really appreciate what he did for us, and he set an example, no question about it.
Yeah. What do you remember about moving to America? You settled in Nazareth, Pennsylvania.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's we came over by ship, Conte Biancamano. We arrived there in June, middle of June, 1955. And then we settled in Nazareth here, as I said, because my uncle had to provide guarantees to get the visas my dad would have a job and so on and so forth. And then the best thing about it is that we arrived here on a Thursday. And we were hanging out the Sunday in my uncle's house. And it was at the edge of town. And all of a sudden, Sunday night, we see bright lights in the foreground. And and then you hear a big roar of engines. And there was stock car racing was going on. See, just in full swing of summer. And Aldo and I just ran over there. We booked and followed the noise. And we see the stock cars. And here we go. And all of a sudden, that was a brand new life injected into us. We figure, well, I always said America won't be so bad after all because they have local racing and which didn't exist in Italy, actually. So, and 2 years later, we started building our own car, our own stock car with 4 other buddies. And for 2 years after that, which is 4 years after I arrived, my career started. My career started in 59, and my last professional race was in 2000. Yeah. So when I started in 59, I never looked back. It just continued on. I was very fortunate in that respect.
Yeah. I talk about when you got started in racing, but, I mentioned earlier that the lids to your mom's pots and pans and how that kind of really got you going. And I read where once you were in America, and I guess in your teens, you and your brother got a job parking cars at a garage. And you talk about the feeling you got when you got behind the wheel of that car to park a car. And it was just something that maybe was difficult to describe.
Well, especially customers' cars,
Right.
It was like, it was a valet, it was in a garage right across the square. That's why when I valet my car today, I'm concerned about what they might be doing with it because my brother and I were doing some burnouts. It was up and just learning standing starts in Formula One. And it was great.
That's good.
They had some spoofy cars. Some of those some of those people that have businesses in town there because Lucca, just the medieval town is at a premium for parking and everything, and so all the merchants there they would park their cars there, and some of them had some really nice cars, and those are the ones we really were looking forward to driving. And so we were doing a few burnouts, but we never put a scratch on them, though. I got to tell you that.
You returned them spotless. That's good. Hey, one story. You mentioned 59, graduated from high school. As I understand, you wanted to be a welder, but you ended up pulling a little end run to get into racing.
Yes, obviously, you had to start looking for something, but at the same time, once we started building this car, the reason I tried to train to be a welder because there was a lot of work to do, a lot of welding to do in this race cars. And then, when you have some problem in a track, some incident, you got to do a lot of welding again.
Yeah.
So you had to learn a lot of things. Aldo and I, we were not mechanics or anything. That's why we sort of armed ourselves with some other buddies that I always said, you always got to have the geek, somebody that really knows what's going on and give you the direction to go. And which we had one guy, I always say, a guy by the name of Charlie Mitch, who was extremely valuable in understanding what we really needed to do locally, do something different. Because, when you're coming on a scene where everybody's doing this week in and week out, it's pretty tough, to come in from the cold and be competitive and beat those guys. We had to do something different, something like what was happening in NASCAR with the cars that were actually winning the short tracks, which were the Hudsons. And so that's why we arrived there with a Hudson, which was very different from what they were running there. They were running 32 Chevys, cut down rail jobs, and we arrived with this Hudson, and we blew their doors off there, because we had the setups that Marshall team had. We bought the setup from a team that was actually dominating NASCAR at the time, which actually was going out of business, by the way, because Hudson pulled out of racing just about that time officially. And then they sold, they sold their race engines to a Whitney company in Chicago, which was, they were using them for power plants. And that's what we bought. We bought the 7X engine, race engine prep from this company for power plants. We put it in our Hudson, and we were going. We were, we were winning some races. So there was no better way to start, obviously, local level, to be able to move on and progress.
What was key, Mario, in your view? Because what's so amazing about your career is how you've won at all these different levels, and in IndyCar, the Open Wheel Series, in NASCAR, in Formula One, the IROCs, across all of these platforms, if you will, or different types of cars. Take us inside that. I mean, what's it like to drive? I mean, it's got to be dramatically different in driving each of those cars. What was key to your success?
I think passion. I think burning passion to be there. That's what I wanted to do in life. I figure if I'm given that opportunity, that's it. That's my rodeo. And I wanted to have the opportunity, I was curious. I had a curiosity factor to look at the other disciplines in the sport, which the sport is rich of that, and each one it's just like an animal trainer, Each animal, requires this, probably a different way to go about it so you don't get bit, And,
right.
The race car can bite you pretty hard, too,
Yeah.
You don't understand what it wants. And but that was a challenge that was well taken, because all it does, I think it gives you a bigger dimension of knowledge as far as to be able to adapt under different conditions, by just even learning what some of different cars really want, how to adapt to what their style of driving needs to be, and all that. So again, all of it just kept me so motivated. It was never a blah. Okay, things are boring, things are all the same. No, never. And that's one of the very reasons why I just really embraced the opportunities to drive in these different disciplines. I got the biggest satisfaction out of that, quite honestly. And when I see some of the today's drivers, that want to move around, like you have this weekend coming up, you have 11 IndyCar drivers at the 24 hours, the Rolex 24 hours at Daytona. That's awesome for the sport. We have, 7-time NASCAR champion Jimmy Johnson is going to be doing full season in Indy cars. The crossover, I think, is very healthy for the sport. It's interesting. It's what the sport needs, what the sport welcomes, and that's what we were doing. I mean, going back to AJ Foyt, when I see Foyt running Daytona, I said, why am I doing that? So I said, I got to do that. Parnelli Jones, he was doing that. Then you got from Formula One, you got Dan Gurney running NASCAR at the Riverside. I got to do that too, So that's what it was. You look at that time, you're following some of your idols out there, some of the ones that you want to, follow their footsteps on. And oh my gosh, I mean, look at that. He's good at this and he's good at that. Let's see how that works. And so that's how it all went for me.
Yeah. Hey, final question, Mario, and it's very unfair, but I know I'm sure you get asked it a lot, but as you look, can you point to a highlight or what a proudest moment, what you want to be remembered most for in the sport, in motorsports? Is there one thing you can point to? Well,
I don't know. I'm a guy that gave 110%, for my job and loving every minute of it. I don't know anyone that loved driving a race car more than I did. And for that, I'm thankful to the sport, always grateful for the opportunities and grateful to so many people that have helped me along the way, because you can't do it alone. I can tell you that. So, yes, but primarily, as I said, it's a guy that purely loved the sport as much as I ever did.
And certainly provided and continues to provide many thrills for thousands and thousands of race fans here in Indianapolis, but also around the world. Mario Andretti, can't tell you what a pleasure it's been to chat with you. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us on the podcast, and good luck in your many ventures going forward. And we're going to keep an eye on that bucket list this year, see what that item might be.
All right. See you in May.
Okay, good. We'll look forward to that. Mario Andretti, our guest this week as we begin season 2 of the Business and Beyond podcast. It's presented by PNC. It is a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Stay ahead with Inside Indiana Business Radio on Demand, your go-to source for the latest business news across the Hoosier State. Join hosts Gary Dick and Alex Brown every weekday morning and afternoon for concise updates on Indiana's top business stories. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app or listen at ibjpodcasts.com.
Do you want to know what really drives change in Indiana? You won't find it in sound bites. You'll find it in stories. Stories from CEOs, lawyers, coaches, entrepreneurs, and community advocates. That's the IBJ Media Podcast Network. Insightful, local, impactful. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcast.com.